My name is Ackermann. I'm the policy analyst working on green reconstruction of Ukraine at the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and I'm also a board member of Ukraine's NGO Ecoaction. Well, Ukraine's damages caused by Russia's full-scale invasion are enormous. You can, of course, find the numbers anywhere now online, and it's important to understand that the damages are increasing as the war continues. Building sector is among those which is very badly damaged. So we have a few sectors in the country which really saw the most damages. So there is buildings, infrastructure, and energy. Of course, we are talking about different levels of damages. Some cities were razed to the ground. We would have to be rebuilding them from scratch, if ever. Others saw minor damages. Some cities in the west of the country, for example, or in the center, saw some shelling and some buildings were damaged. But except for that, except for very obvious war-related needs, there is also other ones which we are facing. We have many internally displaced persons in millions who moved to different parts of the country. Of course, in the west of Ukraine, there is many. And they need also homes because the cities are not able to accommodate everyone. So, of course, we need housing and quick housing for those people too. And, well, this is why we are talking about how do we rebuild, and depending on which part of the country you're talking to, what kind of city, it's different issues that they are facing. Again, starting from some that they need to develop a whole new general master plan for the town. Probably Mariupol would need it, Mykolaiv, Kharkiv are working on it, and some other cities, to the rethinking of the economy, rethinking of how the city should develop in the West, for example, what to do, how to deal with this internally displaced persons, how to find economic activity for them and what it would mean for the city and so on. So the needs are really really different. And one more important thing is that, of course, when we rebuild, we don't have enough materials in Ukraine. First of all, if you have a pile of how this is called, the waste or the debris after the destruction, we don't have yet facilities in place. We just started having first ones to recycle those debris. Because we have to be talking about actually the circular economy where we actually recycle the debris and we use them in the construction or infrastructure development. But also, of course, then when we have to build new houses, we need the materials to build them. Where are you taking those from? We don't have enough glass, for example, for the needs of the country. The need in windows is enormous. Everybody wants to replace windows because, in fact, even if your house is not damaged, if there is an explosion, very often windows collapse, explode, and so on. So the need for glass is enormous, but also for if you look further into it's nearby future, building new houses for Ukraine, but building them really better according to the newest European standards, near zero energy buildings and so on. For those, we also would need materials of new sorts, new insulation materials and other type of equipment that we still don't have yet in Ukraine. We don't have production. And that is a great also economic opportunity to have those production of those equipment materials in Ukraine to help the country rebuild and also to help to rebuild its own economy sustainably in the longer term. Of course, as now we are talking about the EU's role as something external, as Ukraine now in the path toward the EU and hopefully as a candidate state and hopefully a member of the EU very soon, we have to be looking at Ukraine as an integral part of the EU, and with all of the corresponding, exchanges, interchanges, and so on, in all of the sectors. The EU is already seen as the most important stakeholder in reconstruction. It is managing the multi-donor coordination platform, so it's Brussels platform for all of the donors that are there, G7, but also big international finance institutions who want to rebuild Ukraine. And then they need to, of course, to agree together with the participation of the Ukrainians, Ukrainian government, on what to rebuild, how, in which manner, how to make it sustainable, how to provide enough resources to rebuild Ukraine. According to the World Bank's latest estimations, to rebuild better would cost more than 400 billion euro. With, of course, the level of damages we have today. Again, they are increasing all the time. What would that mean? How much it would take? It's up to this platform to decide. So basically, the EU is playing the role of this coordinator partner, but also, of course, providing very big and substantial financial resources to help rebuild in Ukraine. And also, I think it's important to underline, and everybody is talking about Ukrainian ownership of reconstruction. So it's Ukrainians who should have a say in how to rebuild. And of course, we already hear now we want to rebuild in line with the EU's goal of climate neutrality by 2050 and so on. While Ukraine would be rebuilt, there is lots of interest of different EU countries, Germany or our neighboring countries, Poland and so on, who helped us enormously, but they of course see economic and business interest in reconstruction because the companies could be coming with their know-how, equipment and so on to Ukraine to physically reconstruct, which is good, and at the same time, and this is what we are discussing also at the forum, of how we can actually have not just be importing that knowledge and resources and know-how, but to actually have that installed in Ukraine, have the production lines installed in Ukraine, which would be very important for Ukraine's sustainable economic recovery and development. Of course, the aligning all of the standards with EU norms is one of the most important tasks that stand now for Ukraine ahead, but also now also many people are working on it. How to align all of our standards with the EU standards, while at the same time to rebuild what needs to be rebuilt quickly, and also, of course, to win the war at the same time. So there is really multiple challenges, but it's definite that for the whole country, for the government, for all of the cities, for everyone, it's clear that Ukraine's path in the EU. I think we still don't have enough understanding what it actually implies. It would imply lots of changes, really immense changes from inside. Our Prime Minister said that we will be aiming for full EU membership by end of 2024, which looks somewhat unrealistic, but of course Ukraine has the ambitions to be moving quickly and fast, and I think it's also thanks to how the world sees how Ukraine is now acting. Many things changed, many things became possible. What we were told just recently, just a few months ago, we were told were not possible. So who knows? We will have to be working hard, of course. And when it comes to energy efficiency in the EU standards, in energy efficiency sector in particular, here there is enormous amount of work, starting from, of course, the legislation that has to be adopted, about, for example, new zero energy buildings, energy efficiency in procurement, and so on. but also doing the capacity building for communities, understand, just really explaining to them how it works, what it means for them, having training for the personnel who has to be actually doing the physically rebuilding better, and perhaps Ukrainians who are now abroad could be a part of these training programs. There is, there is many things that have to be happening at the same time, and it's of course challenging while we are lacking human resources at the moment a lot. This is where the international also partners could definitely step in and support Ukraine in this. This is exactly the will of Ukrainians to build back better, or rather to modernize. And definitely if we have to rebuild a whole city from scratch or the whole neighborhood from scratch, we would never be rebuilding it even to the existing standards. It would not be seen as something resilient enough. If we rebuild to the existing Ukrainian standards, it will be just a building, just a box. If we take the newest standards, the near zero energy standards or zero emission standards, or even something in between, doesn't matter, we would also have renewables in place, heat pumps in place instead of connecting them to the gas. And people would appreciate it because after the attacks on Ukraine's energy sector, we know for sure that energy resilience is important for Ukrainians. Overwhelming number of Ukrainians support decentralized and safe energy system, so they really want to make sure that they have electricity in the critical moments. As we understand, we would probably never avoid living peacefully in the coming decades, as long as the neighbor is with us. So EU standards are there as a guideline. Perhaps we can make it even better. Perhaps we can be an inspiration, the way we rebuild for not only Europe, but also the world. It's not unfortunately, the last crisis we see with the climate change and with all its effects. Building after any disasters has to mean building better when you rebuild. And we have the technologies in place. In fact, we don't have to be inventing the wheel. We have technologies, we have expertise, so we have to have the will and of course the resources to do it and find those. So this would be crucial for everyone. There is just, as a last point, there is, although this 400 billion euro worth of rebuilding Ukraine sounds like something huge, and definitely Ukraine would not be able to cope with it. But if we spread, evenly between different countries of what it actually means for them, it's like a minor percentage of the GDP of the wealthiest countries in the world, the 0 point something. And building the stronger Ukraine is important for everyone's security, economically strong, where people are living prosperously and where people are back. So we cannot afford a weak Ukraine, we cannot afford Ukraine who lost millions of its population. We have to have them back. Ukraine is the protection and the wall of Europe and the Western world. So this is our common goal that we have to be definitely working on achieving together.